Everyone wants the perfect critical ops settings. The sensitivity that makes your aim feel effortless. The crosshair that somehow makes headshots easier. The graphics settings that help you see enemies faster. And, of course, the secret settings used by the best players. You've probably seen those videos before. Best critical ops settings. Perfect sensitivity. Copy these settings for better aim. So you try them. You copy the sensitivity. You copy the crosshair. You copy the HUD. You enter a match expecting everything to feel better. And somehow, your aim feels worse. So you change the settings again. And again. And again. But what if the problem isn't that you haven't found the perfect settings? What if the problem is that you're searching for something that doesn't exist? Today, we're going to fix that. We're going through sensitivity, aim acceleration, crosshair, graphics, frame rate, audio, and your HUD. But I'm not going to give you a random list of numbers and tell you to copy them. Instead, I'm going to show you how to build settings that actually work for you. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand something far more valuable than another sensitivity code. You'll understand why your settings work. Welcome to Peak Theory. Let's begin with the setting that causes more players to question their aim than almost anything else. Sensitivity. Here's a situation almost every FPS player has experienced. You enter a match. Your aim feels good. Then you lose an easy gunfight. You miss another shot. And suddenly, something feels wrong. Maybe my sensitivity is too high. So you lower it. You play another match. Now turning feels too slow. So you increase it again. Then you watch a really good critical ops player. Their aim looks incredible. So naturally you think, I need their sensitivity. You copy everything. Same horizontal sensitivity. Same vertical sensitivity. Same acceleration. Everything. There's just one problem. You're not playing with their hands. Why copying settings doesn't work? Think about this. One player might use a large tablet. Another might play on a small phone. One player uses 2 fingers. Another uses 3. Another uses 4. Their grip is different. Their screen is different. Their finger movement is different. Even the amount of physical space available for each swipe can be different. So copying the exact same number doesn't guarantee the exact same experience. And that's the first thing you need to understand. The goal isn't to find someone else's perfect sensitivity. The goal is to find your own consistent sensitivity. Speed versus control. Your sensitivity has 2 jobs. The first is speed. If an enemy appears away from your crosshair, you need to be able to turn quickly enough to respond. But the second job is precision. When your crosshair is already close to an enemy's head, you need to make tiny corrections without constantly moving past the target. And that's where players get trapped. Go too fast. And your crosshair becomes difficult to control. Go too slow. And large adjustments become difficult. So we're looking for a balance. Enough speed to react. Enough control to be precise. And fortunately, there's a simple way to start finding it. The first test. Enter a training environment. Choose 2 clear points that are separated on your screen. Put your crosshair on the first point. Then move quickly to the second. Do it again. And again. Don't try to make the movement look impressive. Watch what your crosshair naturally does. If you consistently fly past the second target and have to correct backwards, that's a sign that your sensitivity may be too aggressive for your current control. But if you consistently stop short and need another large swipe to reach the target, your sensitivity may be too slow for the way you move. Adjust it gradually, not dramatically. Then repeat the test. What you're looking for is a movement that feels fast, but predictable, because predictable is the important word. The second test. Now we test precision. Place your crosshair on a small target. Move away from it. Then return to exactly the same point. Do this from different directions. Left, right, above, below. If you constantly overshoot the target, reduce your sensitivity slightly. If reaching it consistently requires too much movement, increase it slightly. We're not searching for perfection. We're searching for control. The rule most players break. And now comes the most important part. Once you've found a sensitivity that feels comfortable, stop touching it. Seriously. Don't change it because you lost one match. Don't change it because you missed one flick. And don't change it just because somebody on YouTube uses a different number. Give yourself time to adapt. Consistency creates familiarity. Familiarity creates control. And control creates better aim. Your brain needs to learn exactly how much movement produces exactly how much rotation on the screen. If you keep changing that relationship every few days, you're constantly changing the problem your hands are trying to solve. The real perfect sensitivity. So what's the perfect sensitivity? It's not a number. It's the sensitivity that lets you move quickly when you need to, make tiny corrections when you need to, and, most importantly, perform those movements consistently. That's the foundation. But there's something else hiding inside the settings menu. Something that can make two identical finger movements produce very different results. And if you don't understand how it works, you can have the right sensitivity and still feel like your aim is unpredictable. That setting is aim acceleration. Aim acceleration. Now we need to talk about one of the most misunderstood settings in critical ops. Aim acceleration. And this one matters because you can have a sensitivity that feels almost perfect, but still feel like your crosshair isn't responding the same way every time. So what exactly is happening? Let's make it simple. Your sensitivity determines how responsive your aim is to your movement. Aim acceleration adds another variable. How fast you move your finger can influence how aggressively your view turns. And that creates an interesting trade-off. You can have precision and speed without necessarily using an extremely high base sensitivity. But there's a catch. The more variables you introduce into your aim, the more your brain has to learn why acceleration feels so different. Imagine making two swipes across your screen. They travel a similar distance, but the first swipe is slow and controlled. The second is fast and aggressive. With acceleration involved, those movements can produce a different feeling in how quickly your view responds. And that's exactly why some players love acceleration. A slow movement can remain controlled for small adjustments. Then, when they need to turn quickly, a faster swipe can produce a more aggressive response. On paper, that sounds perfect. Precision when you need precision. Speed when you need speed. But there's another side to it. The consistency problem. Remember what we said in part 1. Predictability matters. Your brain is constantly learning the relationship between your finger and your crosshair. When that relationship is simple, building consistency can be easier. Move this far. Turn this far. Repeat it thousands of times. And eventually, you don't even think about it. Acceleration changes that relationship. Now the speed of your movement matters too. That doesn't automatically make acceleration bad. It simply means you have another variable to master. And that's why copying someone else's acceleration settings can be just as problematic as copying their sensitivity. Their aim has adapted to those settings. Yours hasn't. Should you use aim acceleration? So here's the big question. Should you use it? The answer depends on what you're trying to solve. If your aim already feels controlled and you're comfortable making both large turns and tiny corrections, you don't need to start changing acceleration just because another player uses it. Don't fix a problem that doesn't exist. But if you constantly struggle between two extremes, this setting becomes interesting. Maybe lower sensitivity gives you excellent precision, but turning quickly feels uncomfortable. Or maybe higher sensitivity gives you great mobility, but your micro adjustments become inconsistent. Acceleration can potentially help bridge that gap, but only if you train with it consistently. The test. Here's how I want you to test it. Don't change 5 settings at once. Change one variable. Then test it. Start with your normal sensitivity. Pick a target. Track it slowly. Pay attention to how controlled your crosshair feels. Then perform a fast turn toward another target. Do it several times. Slow movement. Fast movement. Slow movement. Fast movement. You're trying to answer one question. Does acceleration make your aim more controllable or more unpredictable? Not faster. Not cooler. More controllable. That's the difference. Don't chase numbers. And here's where most players make the same mistake again. They want a number. Just tell me the best acceleration. But that's exactly the trap we're trying to escape. There is no magical percentage that instantly improves everybody's aim. Your goal is to create a relationship between speed and precision that you can repeat. If a lower amount gives you that control, use it. If you're already comfortable with your current value, keep it. And if acceleration constantly makes you overshoot targets, don't be afraid to simplify your aim. Settings exist to solve problems, not create new ones. Something important changed. There's also something current critical ops players should know. Critical ops recently changed how aim acceleration behaves internally. The game fixed an issue where aim acceleration could depend on frame rate. Existing settings were converted during the update to preserve their previous behavior as closely as possible. So if you've returned to critical ops after a long break, or you're following an old settings guide, keep this in mind. An old number isn't automatically the best reference for how the game feels today. Test your aim in the current version of the game, not in somebody else's old YouTube video. The peak theory rule. So here's our rule for aim acceleration. Start with control. Add speed only when you need it. And once you've found something predictable, stop changing it. Your settings should eventually become boring. You shouldn't be thinking about sensitivity in the middle of a gunfight. You should be thinking about the enemy, the angle, the crosshair, the shot. When your settings disappear from your attention, that's when they're finally doing their job. Transition, crosshair. But now we have a problem. We can build the most consistent sensitivity possible. We can understand acceleration perfectly, and we can still miss easy shots because we're looking through the wrong crosshair. Size, thickness, color, gap, visibility. Some crosshairs make information easier to process. Others can actually make aiming harder. So next, we're going to build a crosshair that isn't designed to look cool. It's designed to help you hit the shot. The perfect crosshair. Now that your sensitivity is under control, we need to talk about something that's sitting in the center of your screen. Every second of every match. Your crosshair. And this is where players make a surprisingly common mistake. They build a crosshair based on how it looks, instead of how well it works. A cool crosshair might look great in a screenshot, but during a gunfight, none of that matters. Your crosshair has one job: help you understand exactly where you're aiming, as quickly as possible. So let's build one that actually does that. Visibility comes first. Let's start with the most important rule. You need to see your crosshair. Always. That sounds obvious. Until you enter a bright area of the map and your crosshair disappears into the background, or you move into a darker corner, and suddenly you can't find the center of your screen. That's a problem. Because during a gunfight, you don't have time to search for your crosshair. Your eyes should find it instantly. So when choosing a color, don't ask, what looks the best? Ask, what can I see the fastest? Test your crosshair in different environments. Bright walls, dark areas, open spaces, indoor rooms. If the crosshair constantly blends into the environment, change it. Visibility beats style. Every time. Size. Next comes size. And bigger isn't automatically better. A huge crosshair can be extremely easy to see, but it can also cover information, especially at longer distances. Imagine an enemy's head occupying only a small part of your screen. If your crosshair covers most of that target, you're making precision harder than it needs to be. But going too small creates the opposite problem. Now your crosshair is precise, but difficult to locate during fast movement. So once again, we're looking for balance. Large enough to recognize instantly, small enough to preserve precision. Your crosshair should guide your eyes, not block them. Thickness. Thickness follows the same principle. Too thin, and the crosshair can disappear when the screen gets busy. Too thick, and it starts covering your target. What we want is a crosshair that remains visible during movement. without becoming the most dominant thing on the screen. Remember, the enemy is the target, not your crosshair. Gap. Now let's talk about the center gap. This can completely change how your crosshair feels. A larger gap gives you more visibility around the exact center. That can feel comfortable at close range, where targets appear larger. But at longer distances, a large gap can make precise placement harder to judge. A smaller gap creates a stronger reference point around the center. But make it too tight, and the crosshair can start covering tiny targets. Again, there isn't one perfect value. We're looking for something that helps you recognize the center, without hiding what you're trying to shoot. The distance test. Here's one of the best ways to test your crosshair. Don't test it only against a wall. That's almost useless. Test it against an actual target. Start close. Place the crosshair on the head, then move farther away. Test it again. Then farther. Keep going until the enemy's head becomes relatively small on your screen. Now ask yourself, can I still clearly see the target? Can I still identify the exact center of my crosshair? Can I make a tiny adjustment without losing sight of the head? If the answer is yes, you're getting close. The movement test. But we're not finished. A crosshair can feel perfect while standing still, and terrible during an actual match. So now, move. Strafe left. Turn quickly. Clear a corner. Switch targets. Then immediately stop your crosshair on a small object. Can your eyes find the center instantly? Or does it take a fraction of a second? That fraction matters. Because real gunfights aren't controlled laboratory tests. The screen is moving. Enemies are moving. Weapons are firing. Utility is exploding. Information is everywhere. Your crosshair needs to remain readable. Inside that chaos, don't copy a crosshair blindly. And just like sensitivity, this is another setting players love to copy. They see a great player using a tiny crosshair, so they make theirs tiny. Or they see a professional using a specific color, and immediately copy it. But remember what we're doing in this video. We're not searching for someone else's settings. We're building yours. You can absolutely use another player's crosshair as a starting point, but then test it. Maybe their screen is larger. Maybe they sit closer to their device. Maybe their eyesight responds differently to certain colors. Maybe they simply prefer something you don't. A professional crosshair doesn't automatically make you professional. Understanding why it works is much more valuable. The peak theory crosshair rule. So here's the peak theory rule. Your crosshair needs 3 things: visibility, precision, consistency. You should see it instantly. And once you find something comfortable, leave it alone long enough to actually learn it. Don't redesign your crosshair every week. The best crosshair eventually becomes something you barely notice. You don't think about it. You simply know where the center of your screen is. The bigger problem. But here's where things get interesting. Your sensitivity can be perfect. Your acceleration can be predictable. Your crosshair can be crystal clear. And your gameplay can still feel terrible. You move your finger, but the game doesn't feel immediate. You enter a gunfight, and the enemy seems to react before you do. Your aim looks smooth one moment, and inconsistent the next. At that point, players often blame their sensitivity again. But the real problem might have nothing to do with sensitivity. It might be your performance settings, frame rate, graphics, visual effects, and the amount of work your device is trying to do while you're trying to win a gunfight. Because the next goal isn't making critical ops look beautiful. It's making critical ops feel responsive. And that's what we're fixing next. Graphics, FPS, and performance. You can have the perfect sensitivity, the perfect crosshair, and excellent mechanics. But none of that feels good if your game can't keep up with you. And this brings us to one of the most overlooked parts of competitive settings: performance. Most players look at the graphics menu and ask one question: how do I make the game look better? For competitive play, I want you to ask a completely different question. How do I make the game feel better? Because those are not always the same thing. FPS isn't just a number. Let's start with frame rate. Most players already know that higher FPS can make a game look smoother. But smoothness is only part of the story. When more frames are being displayed, movement can appear more fluid. Tracking can feel clearer, and visual information can update more frequently. In a tactical shooter, that matters, because you're constantly making tiny decisions based on what you see. An enemy entering a doorway, a shoulder appearing around a corner, a player crossing your crosshair. The clearer and more consistent that information feels, the easier it becomes to respond confidently. But there's something even more important than chasing the biggest FPS number possible. Consistency. High FPS versus stable FPS. Imagine your device can sometimes reach a very high frame rate, but then drops dramatically during gunfights. Everything feels smooth while walking around the map. Then utility appears. Players enter the screen. Weapons start firing. And suddenly, your performance drops. That's exactly when you needed stability the most. So don't optimize your settings around the highest FPS number you can see. Optimize them around the frame rate your device can actually maintain. A stable experience is predictable. And remember what we've been saying throughout this entire video. Predictability creates consistency. Don't chase a number your device can't hold. Let's say your device offers a higher frame rate option. You enable it. At first, everything feels incredible. But after several minutes, the device starts getting hot. Performance begins to fluctuate. Maybe the screen starts feeling less responsive. Now that higher setting isn't necessarily helping you anymore. This is why the highest available option isn't automatically the best competitive option. The best option is the highest performance level your device can sustain comfortably and consistently. That's a very different idea. Graphics settings. Now let's talk about graphics. This is where competitive players need to separate visual quality from useful visual information. Beautiful effects can make a game look impressive, but during a ranked match, your priorities are different. You need to identify enemies quickly, recognize movement, read important information, and maintain stable performance. So when you're adjusting graphics, ask yourself one question for every setting. Does this help me see the fight, or does it just make the fight prettier? That's the test. Visual clarity. Competitive graphics aren't necessarily ugly graphics. They're clear graphics. You want enough visual quality to understand the environment easily, without unnecessary effects competing for your attention. Think about what your eyes are actually searching for. Enemy silhouettes, movement, corners, doorways, utility, your crosshair. Those elements matter. Everything else is secondary. If reducing a visual option improves performance without making enemies harder to identify, that's usually a good trade. But don't blindly turn everything down just because somebody told you to. Test it. The real performance test. And here's where most settings videos make a mistake. They test performance while nothing is happening. That's not enough. If you want to know whether your settings are actually stable, test them during chaos. Play a real match. Watch what happens during gunfights, when multiple players appear, when grenades are being used, when you're moving quickly through the map, when the device has already been running the game for a while. That's the performance that matters, not the FPS you get while staring at an empty wall. Heat changes everything. There's another enemy that doesn't appear on the mini-map. Heat. Mobile devices have limited cooling, and when a device gets too hot, performance can change. This means a configuration that feels amazing during the first few minutes might feel completely different later. So when testing settings, don't test for 30 seconds. Play. Give the device time to warm up. Then pay attention. Does the frame rate remain consistent? Does touch still feel responsive? Are you experiencing sudden drops? If performance gets noticeably worse as the device heats up, your settings may be too aggressive. Competitive priority. So here's the order I want you to remember. First, stable performance. Second, visual clarity. Third, Visual quality, not the other way around. This doesn't mean your game has to look terrible. It means every visual setting needs to earn its place. If you can increase visual quality without sacrificing stability, great. Keep it. But if one setting makes the game look slightly better while creating performance problems, you already know which one matters more. Device differences. And this is another reason why copying settings blindly doesn't work. Someone playing on a powerful tablet can run settings that might be completely unrealistic for an older phone. Someone else's device might sustain a higher frame rate for hours. Yours might not. That doesn't mean your device is useless. It means your settings need to match your hardware. The goal isn't to make your game look exactly like a professional player's game. The goal is to make your device perform as consistently as possible. The peak theory performance rule. Here's our rule. Don't chase maximum graphics. Don't even chase maximum FPS. Chase maximum stable performance. Find the highest frame rate your device can maintain reliably. Then adjust visual quality around that target. Test during actual gunfights. Test after the device warms up. And once everything feels stable, stop touching it. Because when a gunfight begins, you shouldn't be wondering whether your frame rate is about to drop. Your attention should be on one thing: winning the fight. But you're still missing information. Now our setup is starting to make sense. Sensitivity gives us control. Acceleration changes how that control responds. The crosshair gives us a clear reference point. And performance makes everything feel consistent. But there's still an entire source of information that many players completely underestimate. You don't need to see an enemy to know they're coming. Sometimes, you can hear the gunfight before it even begins. Footsteps, reloads, gunfire, movement, directional information. And if your audio settings are wrong, you're voluntarily giving away one of the strongest advantages available to you. So next, we're fixing your audio.